Let's be blunt. If you're using AI, you almost certainly have a legal blind spot. So in this explainer, we're not going to waste time on theory. Instead, I'm going to give you the operational blueprint to build a zero-violation consent architecture. Think of it as your primary legal shield in the age of AI.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to walk through 4 key areas. First, why AI consent is an absolute imperative right now. Second, the architecture of a truly compliant system. Third, we'll get practical on how to actually deploy the banners and policies. And finally, how to prove you've done it all correctly.
Okay, let's just dive right in. First up, we really need to understand the stakes here. Because the old ways of thinking about consent, they are completely insufficient in the age of AI, especially if you're operating under California law.
This number is pretty much why we're here. $7,500. That is the maximum fine under the California Privacy Rights Act, the CPRA, for a single intentional violation. So if your AI touches personal data without the right kind of consent, you're triggering this liability with every interaction.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how clearly this slide shows why your standard cookie banner is basically useless for AI. See, to be compliant, you have to satisfy these 3 legal pillars. You need transparency, which means you have to tell people an AI is involved. You need to provide clear opt-out rights for any automated decision-making. And you need purpose limitation, which means you can't just use their data to train your next language model without getting their explicit permission first.
So clearly, we need a whole new model. The big question is, how do you actually build a system that nails those 3 pillars every single time? Well, that brings us to the blueprint, what we call the closed-loop architecture. And here it is. This is the core concept for this entire explainer, the closed-loop AI consent architecture. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. You're creating a defensible system that connects a user's choice to your legal policies and finally to a persistent audit trail. It's a complete, unbroken circle of compliance.
So let's break this loop down into its 3 essential parts. Phase 1 is active capture. This is where a banner physically intercepts the user and forces a decision before any data gets processed. Phase 2 is static documentation, where that banner links directly to an updated AI-specific privacy policy. And Phase 3, the persistent audit, is the tracker that proves you did everything right. And I can't stress this enough. If any one of these phases fails, the entire compliance shield just collapses.
Okay, theory's great, but let's get practical. How do we actually put this architecture to work in the real world? We're going to start with Phase 1, active capture.
A compliant banner, it's so much more than just a little I agree button. To be legally valid, it has to contain these 4 specific components. First, explicit AI identification. You have to state that an AI system is processing the input. Second, clear toggles, and no pre-checked boxes allowed. That's a huge no-no. Third, you have to clearly define the data usage scope. And finally, a documentation link that goes to the specific AI-enhanced policy, not some generic homepage.
The whole point here is to take the guesswork completely out of the equation. This banner matrix gives you the right tool for every single job. You just identify your touch point, is it for patients or for staff, active or passive, and you can deploy a pre-vetted, compliant banner instantly. This is how you remove the risk of human error.
Let's take a really high-stakes example, patient-facing diagnostics. Here you're not just handling personal data, you're handling protected health information that is feeding into an AI's decision-making process. It's no surprise these banners face the absolute highest level of regulatory scrutiny.
And this is a brilliant way to visualize the concept of guarding the digital front door. When a user interacts with a chatbot, for instance, there's a huge risk of them accidentally spilling sensitive data. So a hard stop interceptor banner has to literally lock the chat interface until that user explicitly opts in.
And please, don't forget this. This isn't just about customers or patients. A very common mistake is overlooking the fact that CPRI rights also extend to your own employees. So if you're using an internal AI copilot to summarize meetings or analyze performance, you need to get consent from your staff, period.
So capturing consent with the perfect banner is awesome, but it's only half the battle. That consent is legally meaningless unless it points to robust, specific, and up-to-date legal documentation. And that brings us to Phase 2.
Just look at this comparison. It's night and day, right? A standard privacy policy is completely silent on the key issues that AI brings up. It just fails.
An AI-enhanced CPRA policy, on the other hand, explicitly details how user inputs are collected and analyzed, things like prompt ingestion. And crucially, it also declares the logic behind automated decisions and names the specific third-party AI vendors you're working with.
So how do you actually upgrade your existing policy? Well, you inject these 3 mandatory modules. Module A gives all the disclosures on automated decision-making. Module B gives users a clear, explicit opt-out for having their data used in model training. And Module C maintains a transparent, public list of all your third-party AI vendors.
So, you've captured consent and you've updated your policies. You're done, right? Not so fast. In the eyes of a regulator, if you can't prove it, it didn't happen. And that brings us to the final, critical piece of the puzzle, the persistent audit.
If a regulator ever comes knocking, this tracker is your single most important document. It is your proof. It maps out exactly where each banner is deployed on your network, it tracks the version control for the banner's code, and it records the precise timestamp your AI-enhanced policy was published. This shows systematic, intentional compliance.
So here's your takeaway, your immediate action plan. Step 1, select and deploy the right banners using that banner matrix. Step 2, copy and inject the 3 mandatory clauses into your privacy policy. And Step 3, populate the tracker with all your deployment locations and timestamps.
This brings us to a guiding principle that you should adopt for everything you do. Every color, word, and slide must pass the compliance test. It has to be clear enough to teach and lawful enough to trust.
Look, securing consent is your first and best line of defense, but it isn't your last. Because what happens when a fully approved AI just goes rogue? Join us next time when we're going to build the emergency response plan, including how to deploy the ultimate fail-safe, kill switches that can instantly sever an AI's network access.
So, I'll leave you with this one critical question to think about. Right now, today, is your consent architecture truly defensible against a regulatory audit? After what you've just learned here, the answer should be a confident yes.